And they shall never perish, neither shall they pluck them out of my hand. My Father which gave them me is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. I and my Father are one.
Then the Jews took up stones against the stone. Jesus answered them,
Many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of these works do you stone me?
the Jews answered him, saying, For a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, because that thou, being a man, makest thyself God. Jesus answered them,
Is it not written in your law, said ye are gods, if ye call them gods, unto whom the word...
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today on the Gospel of John. And of course, we're at chapter 11. We're going to pick up our examination at verse 17, but we're going to read the whole chapter. But for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified thereby. Might be glorified thereby. When he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. Then after that he saith to his disciples, Let us go into Judea again. His disciples said unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. These things said he, and after that he saith unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go, that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well. Howbeit Jesus spake of his death, but they thought that he had spoken of taking of rest and sleep. Then said Jesus unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we may die with him. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. Jesus saith unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? She saith unto him, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. And when she had so said, she went her way and called Mary her sister secretly, saying, The Master is come, and calleth for thee. As soon as she heard that, she rose quickly and came unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her, when they saw Mary that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, She goeth to the grave to weep there. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou had been here, my brother had not died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping, which came with her, he groaned in the spirit, and was troubled, and said, Where have ye laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, Behold how he loved him. Some of them said, Could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus therefore again, groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, Take ye away the stone, Martha. Take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days. Jesus saith unto her, Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And when he was dead and he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, Loose him, let him go. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary had seen the things which Jesus did, believed on him. But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council, and said, What do we do? For this man doeth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. Very important revelation, their motivation. And one of them named Caiaphas. All right, now that's connected. I'm going to say it's fine. One of them named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, that the whole nation perish not. And this spoke he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation. And not for that nation only, but that he also should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Then from that day forth took they counsel together to put him to death. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went thence unto a country near to the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there continued with his disciples. And the Jews' Passover was nigh at hand, and many went out of the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Then sought they for Jesus, and spake among themselves as they stood in the temple, What think ye, will he not come to the feast? Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a commandment, that if any man knew where he were, he should show it that he might take him. And that's 6 days before the Passover. That's why I get confused, because if you remember, it was the feast. Well, here's the thing. We had the feast of the Passover in chapter 10. When Jesus was walking in the temple in Solomon's porch. No, that was the Feast of Dedication. It was winter. I thought, wait. Well, that was Feast of Dedication. All right, now we go, whatever. The Passover was nigh, and then it is 6 days away in the next chapter. So whatever. I should just go look at my paper I wrote on it. I got it on the computer over here. It's not on, I don't know where it is on the website exactly. It's there. I believe it's there somewhere. Covering with a non-doctrinal. Okay, whatever. Anyways, so we covered the first 16 verses or so. I think the one verse I was thinking about the most last time, about the 12 hours in the day, it struck me as I read it this time, just as it was passing by, it was kind of like, they want, I can't be in hiding. I can't hide. When it's daytime, while there's time, we covered that. I think we covered it good enough, but it did strike me as like, probably true that it is a don't hide your light under a bushel kind of thing, but put in a different way. I mean, while it's day, we have to walk. We have to do our works in the light so they can be seen. Because if you're working in the darkness, you're going to stumble. And so I think that's what he was alluding to or expressing. Okay, so now Jesus has come to the grave, and we discovered that Lazarus is now dead 4 days. So he waited 2 days, and then we know at that point at least that Lazarus had died by then. And when he arrived, he had been in the grave 4 days already. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, again, because it's in Judea. Well, I mean, it is really close. It is like almost like it's a suburb, essentially. 15 furlongs, I think, is just a couple miles. And many of the Jews come to Martha, and maybe it's short of a mile, I don't know. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. It's just a little village just outside the city, basically. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary still in the house, which is interesting. I don't want to try to judge Mary or Martha's actions, except at the point where it makes sense, where we see, I don't know why Mary is just waiting. Well, Jesus waited 2 days and she's not running to him, but Martha goes out right away. If you remember in the other incident with Mary and Martha, is the one where they said, Jesus said, Martha, Martha, you're busy about serving and all this stuff, but Mary has chosen that which was better because she just sat there to listen to him. But we see from this that she was listening. So first off, she says, if you had been here, my brother had not died. She had enough faith to believe that, Jesus wasn't going around raising the dead. That's what we expect him to do when he comes back, right? He's going to raise the dead. The dead shall be raised incorruptible and we shall be changed. Right? That's the resurrection. But she indicates here, this I think is, she's saying, hey, I know that even now, whatever you will ask of God, God will give it you. She indicates that as knowledge. I know this. That's how strong God will give it to you. Is thy brother shall rise again. It's a leading statement in a sense, because of course I feel just like Mary drawn to think of the last day because he speaks of the future. He didn't add a today, to like let her know that he meant, no, I'm going to do it right now. And because even though they believe he could, they're hedging their, it reminds me of a lot the way I used to pray to God. And I still do from time to time. I have to remind myself, I like to pray more like the Lord. Father, I know you hear me. You always do. Lord, hear our prayer. Lord, hear our prayer. We petition and petition. It's like, well, the truth is, through faith, I know he hears me. I don't need to ask because he said he will hear me. It's kind of redundant to ask it all the time. I don't want to be all redundant and bored. I mean, the Lord has patience with us, right? He knows our frame. But even so, when I look at this, I see God's, even with the men that God has chosen, it's like we are really just pathetic in so many ways. And so, it's not surprising that when the Lord came to the earth, that's how it just fell out. It's like man just can't measure up to what God expects of him. That's why he came, was so that we could, to provide a way, to make a way through the veil of his flesh, as it's said, to him living and dying. Because his dying is, he had to live too. He had to do the works that God gave him to do. So now she says, I know he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Now, when I used to believe that wasn't true, meaning that I believed essentially that, well, he was already in heaven. And most people do believe their loved ones are already in heaven. And let me tell you, from their perspective, from the dead's perspective, they are. Because there's no passage of time for them. You die and then you meet the Lord. That's what happens next. That's the next event that happens in your space-time continuum, okay? As far as from your subjective perspective. The rest of us, the world keeps going, and it hasn't ended yet. And the thing is, this resurrection at the last day, as far as I know, like a few things we see here, this is something Jesus has coined. And that's something I want to mention about this part. When Jesus says Lazarus is sleeping, his disciples are confused because they thought they spoke of taking rest and sleep. And he has to say plainly, Lazarus is dead. Now, in the New Testament, we notice that Paul and some of the other writers of the epistles, I'm not sure actually, but I know Paul talks about also of those that sleep in Jesus. Will he bring with him, right? Those that sleep in Jesus, right? Especially like First Thessalonians and stuff like that, right? Because he's going to come and he's got to raise them. I don't know. I can't remember, and I'd have to look pretty good. Well, he's drawing on Isaiah. Awake and sing, ye that dwell in the dust. But I don't know how commonly they thought, for the early Christians, referring to the dead as sleeping became a very strong idiom that they would use. Because of the fact that the Lord used it so often. And because we believe that the dead are going to live. And that inevitability means that in God they are ever living. They're not actually dead, they're merely sleeping. Because God is going to wake them up again. He's promised that. And here we see, Lazarus is in the grave 4 days already, because that's beyond, Christ, the idea that 4 days he would be stinking by then, like he's good and dead. They buried him 4 days ago. If he's laying in the grave 4 days, he might have been dead for 5. Actually, because if he's been in the grave, they don't bury him the instant they die. They prepare the body. They have a, depending on the religion, they may have a thing where people gather and, and then they bury him. And it takes a bit of time. Might take the better part of a day just to get him buried. If he dies at night, it won't be till the morning, And the day, if he dies on the Sabbath, it won't be till the day after, Because I don't think they dug graves on the Sabbath. Of course, they didn't dig graves. Anyways, when she says this, I used to have to say that, she's reflecting the folk beliefs of the Jews, which is not untrue, because the resurrection, not all the Jews believed in the resurrection. Some said there was no resurrection, because the resurrection in the Old Testament is pretty thin. We read in Isaiah, it's very apparent, and if you listen to my study on Isaiah, as we go through it, I point out all the time, this passage here really, it's speaking in the spirit of resurrection, of life from the dead. Well, and because a lot of it had to do with Israel being restored as a nation, Jacob, and this sort of coming together again to revive again the children of Israel when he would return their captivity. It was like a resurrection of the nation. But there's also a specific resurrection which is promised in Christ of our bodies, that they would be changed like into his glorious body, as it's written. But she states in faith, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus does not rebuke this belief. This is the truth. This is what he taught. And we remember it from chapter, was it 5 or 7? No, it's 5, isn't it? Right? Well, I'm going to scroll. John's a big book. Now we had the spiritual resurrection, they that hear shall live. But there is the hour coming in which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice. That's a category that includes a lot of people. That's all that are in their graves. And in the book of Revelation, it reveals also in the sea and in hell, which is the grave in that context. Because death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged according to the works and tossed in the lake of fire. And death and hell were cast in the lake of fire. This is the second death. And as far as the torment that goes on forever, that is merely a metaphor for the memory of them. For the test, because torment indicates like a kind of testing, putting something to the test to extract information out of it. That's what you torture people for. You ever seen 24? Where's the bomb? Where's the bomb? Jack Bauer, right? What'd you do with the bomb? And there's useful information. The point of torture is to extract that which is useful from someone. And the second death means that all that could ever been extracted from them forever and ever is extracted from them. Their use is, they've completed their mission. That's how I look at it. I mean, you could say, but the other option is to say, well, death is just spiritual. It's just a spiritual death. It's just a metaphorical death. How do you get to make that decision? It comes from conditioned readings of the scripture. That's how your mind has been conditioned to read the scripture with the preformed opinions that we already have. That's how but then what do you do when the scriptures are confusing? Well, a lot of times what people do is they retreat to what they already believe. They retreat from confronting the difficult scripture into basically cowardly, hiding from it. I know this because that's what I used to do. I know that's what I did. I just walked away defeated. I don't understand, but I'll just keep believing what I believe. Because my mind is not open to God. I didn't want to hear what he had to say. Or I did, but it was confusing me because I thought I already knew the truth. When you think you know the truth, it's hard because there's nothing more arrogant than thinking you know the truth. I mean, that's what people always used to say, because I would say what I thought was the truth, and they'd say, you're so arrogant. And I'm like, I know it's anytime anyone says they know the truth, if you disagree with them, they got to seem like the most arrogant person in the world, right? Because they're talking about something like it's true, and it's not. But again, so, I don't want to hammer it. Like I say, I believe in the brotherhood of us as believers. You can believe that something that's a little weird, from my view, like that doesn't make a nice, it's so much better. I feel so much more like I understand the scriptures when I put it the way, when I accept it the way God has shown it to me. But that doesn't mean that my understanding is perfect. And so we should all pray that the Lord would show us, give us a more clear and perfect understanding of the scriptures, and humbly bear with us. I will humbly bear with you because I want God to bear with me. So, but anyways, there's a resurrection of life and a resurrection of damnation. That's for all that are in the grave. But there's also a resurrection which is only for believers, which is to God. And so Lazarus here is raised prematurely, not to that ultimate resurrection, to that body that is to be, but merely raised again to live again. As a man, I've always presumed, right, that Lazarus died again, right? We assume that he died eventually for some other reason, maybe when he was old, Lord, give him a long life. We don't know much about it afterwards. I don't know much about it afterwards, let's say. There may be people who think they know, or maybe people who really do, but I don't know. So, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. That is, I didn't even go, I went to the part, all the graves that are hearing their voice, but the resurrection at the last day was a phrase that Jesus used. And I will raise him up at the last day. Wasn't that in chapter 6, actually? Yeah, it was when he was talking about eating his flesh and drinking his blood, and I will raise him up at the last day. Now, Martha here is the kind of person who's trying to eat and drink Jesus' flesh and blood, because she really believes everything he says. She does. She doesn't anticipate what he's about to do, so she assumes disappointment. Because she doesn't think that she figured if Christ wanted him to be alive, he would have gotten here ahead of time. But this must be Lazarus' time. And so she indicates total faith in him, that, one, whatever you will ask of God, he will give it you. So indicating, like, I know you can fix this. When Jesus says, thy brother shall rise again, she immediately thinks of the resurrection at the last day, which he has spoken of. Back in chapter 6, she may have been one of the people present. I believe they were still in, chapter 6, were they in Judea? Or were they in one of those other places? Oh, that was the multitude. The multitude that had followed him. So there's a lot of people, there were some Jews that believed on him there. And he got eaten my flesh and drink my blood. And then many disciples went back and walked no more with him because of that. That was, I believe that was the wilderness of Judea or something like that. Whatever. It was after they crossed the sea. So they were up there. They weren't by Jerusalem. All right. So, so after this is all this initial exchange, and he says, he leads her with the remark, well, he'll rise again, right? You believe what I say, right? But, because he doesn't say, he says, whatever you will ask of God. She accepts like the fact that, well, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And already comforted her, she already comforted herself. He's been in the grave 4 days. This is what she's been comforting herself with, because the Lord hasn't come. And until the Lord comes, that's all we can comfort ourselves with in our dead. When someone dies, we would say, I'm going to see him again on the resurrection at the last day. And Jesus says to her, I am the resurrection and the life. As I said, it's like, you want to live? You have to eat him. You have to drink him. He that believeth in me, you must believe in me. And you can see from the Gospel of John that expectation on his part is quite high. Why won't you believe? I say he weeps tears of anger because people will not believe. Yet they believe. Yeah, but you don't really believe. Because if you did, like I said, if you really, 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 really believed, like you ought to, meaning it infused every moment of your life, the absolute faith that God not only exists, but he is who he is. He is who he says he is. For one, you have to kind of learn who he is to even be that deep in the faith. But we know faith can be increased. I know it can be decreased. So you can get to the point where you almost people lose their faith. And I do think, if you think in terms of the guy with one talent, like his one talent is a claim to faith, is what I would call it. A claim to faith. But he doesn't do anything with it. He just buries it in the earth. And so he's not accepted. And that which he had, which God gave him, which was that thing that, here's Jesus. He put your faith in him and he's like, okay, I got it. But that's it. We learned from chapter 6 and from other places, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Like I said, what you seem to have, you're going to lose. Christianity is not supposed to be a game. It's not an insurance policy. God is merciful. You don't have to be a Bible teacher. You don't have to be a prophet. You don't have to be an apostle. You don't have to be some big, highfalutin, person of some big thing. It's like we all have a place, but we have to get to know our Lord. Otherwise, because it's like, there's a wedding coming, essentially. A wedding, when he comes, it's going to be like a wedding. Like, he's going to receive us as a bride. And, boy, you don't want to be like that. You don't want this to be a blind wedding. Lest he come to you and say, I don't know who you are. Why are you here? What'd you do with your faith? Oh, you just buried it. That's why I don't know who you are. He knows who are his. He knows his. He knows their names. When you meet Jesus, he will call you by name. May not be the name you're used to. Whatever. He has a name for you. I will give them a white stone, and in that stone a new name written. It's God's name for you. It's who you really are. I assume each of those names is probably unique, in a way, or whatever. It's like, well, because here's the thing, just like Christ is unique. You can name someone, I knew a guy named Jesus, spelled just like Jesus, but of course he's not Jesus. He's Jesus. And even if he was Jesus, he'd be Jesus Gonzalez or whatever. I forgot his last name. That sounds like a cool name, actually. Jesus Gonzalez, really. Anyways, he that believeth in me, I mean, it sounds cool when you pronounce it with the anglicized Jesus instead of Jesus. Anyway, so, and nothing wrong with Jesus. I don't want to get Jesus mad at me. I am because Jesus is just such a powerful name, you know, because in our language, in English, we don't name kids Jesus. We give them Joshua or something, you know, which is just exactly the same name, really, but, or let's say it comes from exactly the same name, all right? So, I'm the resurrection. He that, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. And what does he mean by that? Well, Lazarus has already died. But though he were dead, yet shall he live. And the idea of never die, what is he's got to be referring to the second death. You'll never truly die. Like, for example, like the human race, individuals die, but the human race goes on, right? And in some ways, there's a perpetuation, right? It goes on and on and on. But what about the dinosaurs? Where are the dinosaurs? Well, they died off. They're gone. You know, permanently. You know, the Lord could bring them back, you know, or science perhaps. I don't know. That'd be rough. It wouldn't be the same. You know, there'd be something like a dinosaur. It'd be just a new creature based on something or other. Not real. Well, it'd be real enough, right? But we never die in the sense that we can never be plucked out of God's hands. He says, they shall never perish. Because when you're dead in this, he says, fear not them that kill the body. Because one of the things that Jesus presents as a belief for Christians, this is something we believe, is that when we die, we're going to rise again. And so therefore, you're not really dead. You're dead. You're really dead, but you're not dead from that death that God has promised that no man shall return from. Because there is a death from which there is no return. That's what he says. He talks about tasting death, or they mention taste death and see death. There's different language used around it. Because it's almost like a contradiction. I mean, it is on its face a contradiction, right? Though he were dead, yet shall he live, and whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Well, wait a second. How can he be though dead if he will never die? You know what I mean? Well, because he's not talking about the same thing. I think that's the only way you can look at it, because if he's talking about the same thing, the same death, then it would be contradictory. But the point is, if you live and believe in him, what God has promised is that you shall never die. And honestly, like I said, you will experience this as if, because like I do believe when you die, you will immediately be before the Lord. You will not experience, like the way we see death on earth is not the way you experience it. That's what I've been trying to say for a long time about the resurrection, is like, people say, oh, you believe in soul sleep? Well, whatever you want to call it. Jesus talked about sleep, but he doesn't mean it literally. No, I mean you die and then you rise again. But since you're dead in that period, you don't actually experience anything such as the passage of time. So you don't actually experience being dead because it's not an experience. It's not an experience. There's no, you're not waiting oh boy. Ooh, my body's dead, but I'm just still stuck with it waiting. I got insomnia of the grave, or whatever. Or, and then people want to go up to heaven for an intermediary state. Because people want to believe, like, while I'm here on earth, they're up in heaven. Grandma's doing it right now. She's not dead right now, because right now is all we care about, and it's so important. Because we put such an emphasis on the reality of this life that we do fear them that kill the body. We fear it. I mean, as human beings, we put our all into this life. You know, people, they save up their whole life so that the end of the life could be easy. They don't even know if they're going to get to the end of their life. But even when they do, is it ever truly easy? I don't think so. You know, because you can take your ease as a human being. You can just take your ease. Sure, take your ease. You've provided for yourself for the future. But given time, we must know our God. You know, that's the point. It's like you have to talk to your Lord, read about Him, learn of Him, and then you're secure. Spend your days in meditation on our God. That's an investment for the future. Because that is what will cause you to live forever, to believe in Him. And again, I don't think it's like this super high bar. I'm just saying, because I want to make sure I make that clear. I'm not saying like, oh, you got to have a lot of faith to even be saved. Well, there is a minimum point at which you're not really having any faith. And so, what we look for is that when we are of the faith, we are His workmanship created in Christ Jesus unto good. That includes you gotta know the Lord. In fact, that's an important point to start. I always think it's funny people start with like witnessing and stuff, or they begin preaching immediately. I mean, you can be a witness for the good things God has done for you in the immediate. But like as far as really telling people who Jesus is, because that's what it is. It's like all you're doing is saying, look, He did a miracle for me. And then all you can do is create people who like those who are following after they got their bellies filled. I could say that about a dozen churches. They go to the church for something, and they also have like, oh, we're gonna have food afterwards. There's a lot of times they involve food, and then people come and they eat and they listen and it sounds good. And through peer pressure, they join. It's like, did they join because they really believed or because their bellies were filled? And so I can't judge that, but God knows. I can't judge men, except, well, tell me, you can tell me. I don't mean you need to tell me personally, but someone could just tell me by telling me what their walk is like. They could tell me, but I'm not, I don't snoop into men's lives. I just know it exists. I am the resurrection. Because when He comes, that's when it happens. And because His power, the power of the resurrection is because of the sacrifice. Like the reason we're going to be raised from the dead, ultimately, is because He died and rose from the dead. Because He died and rose again, we shall also rise again. But the thing is, like I said, our life is always kept safe in God. You know what I mean? No man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. Your life is, you have to be, like I said, you don't have to be some super teacher, some genius, you don't even have to be the Mr. Winning of souls and all that stuff, which is all good. Well, and the thing is, you may do that very well anyways, with the relationships in your life. Like I said, don't despise small things. I have a small study, so you can also appreciate that. That's a tiny little ministry that still has a purpose. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be thousands of people. It doesn't have to be millions of people listening to someone for the ministry to have a purpose. I went to churches. There are small study groups all over the place. There's little purpose. There's purpose in all those things. Now, sometimes, I don't know. I haven't done well with groups because there's always a little group politics and all this stuff. It's like, ugh. Because some people just are not, they don't know the Lord. And they don't act like Him. As far as act as He would have us act. I don't expect them to go around. You can't go around. Here's the thing. When I talk about acting like Jesus, I do want to pray like Him. But I don't honestly have the the only adjective I can think of is slightly profane. The cojones. There we go. It's like a euphemism or whatever. I don't even know what that means. The huevos. The eggs. To basically be like, so he comes off as arrogant because he's just speaking the truth. You know what I mean? I am the Son of God. Now I'm also a son of God through faith in Christ. I also, I can come boldly to the throne of grace. I don't want to overdo it because I need to be humble because I'm not quite there, right? So not quite. That is being very kind and generous to myself. Okay. Not quite. I'm a long way off, but that is not to say I'm on the way or been on the way. And in so doing, that manifests our faith. Our faith is manifest in the workmanship of God in us, what he's doing. So the main thing is we just want to see that work happening at whatever pace, in whatever way. Every little bit, as I say, learn first. You got to learn. I didn't bother with that. I learned a bit. I learned first really fast and wrong, and then immediately went to work because they called me to it. And so there you go. And when, and then he asked her if she believes this, and she says, "Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world." She hit all the notes there. You are the Christ. The Christ is the Son of God in a special way. But you've come into the world. You're not just a normal person. You're the Christ, the Son of God. The Lord said unto my Lord, "Sit thou at thy right hand." There was something about the Messiah that was more than a man. Yet it was completely a man. And when she had so said, she went her way and called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, so she went to Mary. Nobody knows that Martha has told Mary this, that the master's calling for her. Though I didn't see him do that. Where did he say, "Where's Mary"? I don't know. Well, whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's a white lie to get her sister to go. Go. He wants to, but he may have called for it. It just didn't get written down. So as soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him. Now, when Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. Oh, so he hadn't gotten to Bethany yet. So I don't know if Mary even heard Jesus was coming because whatever. Okay. So when Mary was come where Jesus was, she saw him. She fell down at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died." And she was weeping. He sees her weeping, and the Jews weeping. Now, in the Middle East, and I believe in the Jewish tradition, at least in the ancient times, there would be a lot. The weeping was like this wailing, and people would come to sympathetically wail with the mourners. There were women. They still, in certain funerals, they hire women to come and wail, so that there'd be wailing and crying, and at the funeral because it seems appropriate, I guess. So there's a lot of, when it says this weeping, you gotta imagine there's a lot of crying going on, because there were all these people that came up to comfort her, and the way they would comfort each other is by weeping profusely. And so, anyway, so when she goes out, right, they follow her because they think she's going to the grave, right? And it's just a big, noisy mess. That's why he groans in spirit, because where he just says, "I'm the resurrection and the life. Though he will never die." And Martha says, "Yes, I believe that thou art the Christ," and all that, right? The Son of God, and all that. "Thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world." He groaned in spirit. Now, last time we talked what that groan means. It means like a horse snorting. It is, what was the, verse 10:33. What was the, embrimomai or something like that, right? Grown in the spirit. And was troubled. I'm only up troubled too. Because remember last time I said that the whole passage kind of hinges on this. I should have said that at the beginning too, but I was tarasso. To stir up, to agitate, to trouble. Okay. To disturb. He found the scene disturbing. Embremomai meant to snort, well, properly, definition, to be moved with anger, to admonish sternly. Usage means to snort with the notion of coercion springing out of displeasure, anger, indignation, antagonism. There's nothing positive about this feeling. It is a snort of antagonistic, which means it's been provoked, antagonized. He's showing antagonism to all this weeping. And like I said, and it's troubling. And like I said, I believe that when he says, I just think this makes the most sense. And I've looked into this, I tried to look at it in a different way. To think of Jesus being sad, and all this. But they got it wrong. They always get it wrong. He did love him, but that's not why he's crying. He's crying because he's frustrated with human beings. Because they don't believe. Even Mary, who was, sat at his feet and chose the better part, isn't showing as much faith as Martha. And even Martha is going to express real doubt here. I mean, it shows she doesn't believe what he said. She believes in him mostly, but just doesn't totally believe, doesn't really, he said he's going to rise. And he didn't say, I mean to raise Lazarus today. But he says, hey, I'm the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will, and they'll never die. Do you believe this? It says, well, yeah, I believe you're the Christ, the Son of God. But did you believe the part about dying? Did you believe the part about, though he were dead, yet shall he live? Don't you know what I'm here to do? Apparently not. He's arrived and they're just crying. Because think about how Jesus looks at it. I'm here. And as long as I'm here, it's like a wedding feast, man. The bridegroom has arrived. It's like he's throwing a party and everyone's crying. Now, it's not quite that way, but it's sort of like that because he came and it was occasion. His coming in the world is an occasion for joy, occasion for rejoicing, peace on earth, goodwill toward men and all that stuff. We still celebrate Christmas because Jesus coming into the world was a big deal. But, and so that's why, they say, hey, how come the disciples of John and of the Pharisees fast often, Jesus, but your disciples fast not? They weren't fasting. And in fact, Christ, he was accused of being, they say, John came neither eating and drinking, and they say he hath a devil, and the Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, behold, a winebibber, and and all that. And to this day, he's still slandered like that. Oh yeah, Jesus liked to hang around with prostitutes or something like, and drink it up. They make that insinuation. It's like, no, he was not. He forgave the adulteress. He preached the gospel to sinners. But he didn't wink at sin, that's for sure. He didn't even care for lack of faith in any measure. Because Mary and Martha have faith. They believe in him. They believe who he is. We believe who he is. We believe he is the Son of God and all that came down and gave his life and rose from the dead, right? On the cross, as the scriptures say. They believe all that stuff. But you think he's going to do a miracle right here, right now? Well, I don't. Right? Most of it, we don't expect miracles right at the second. Though if we really believed, one, would we ever step out of line? No, Jesus, he always did those things which pleased God. He knew who he was. If I knew who he was, I'd probably always do the things that please God too. If I truly knew him. Now I know him in part. I understand him in part. I follow him in part. But when we see him, it'll be complete. But I want the part to be I want it to be like when he finishes me, I want it to be like a puzzle of 1,000 pieces. And when I meet him, it's the final piece. Not these guys sit down and be like, oh, Paul, you've barely put this puzzle together. You've just found the corners and the edges. That's acceptable, though, because what? You found the edges. You found the corners. You started working on your puzzle that is your life that God has given you. So good. Just don't leave it all undone. Like, take the time. Figure it out. Know the Lord. Put your Christian life together. Complete the puzzle. Yeah, you believe in him, but you could believe better and more. It's not easy to increase your faith either. I know, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to increase your faith. When the disciples asked Jesus, he said, oh, yeah, here, I'll increase your faith. If you had the faith as the grain of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, be removed and cast in the sea, and it would obey you. And I'm never sure if it's like that's the amount of faith, or if he was saying, because I've taught it both ways, that it's actually the mustard seed has perfect faith. Because the mustard seed knows what it is and what it's going to be, not consciously, but it's sort of unlike us, we flounder. The cats don't question why they like to kill or why they like to lay around. They just do it because it's their instinct. Human beings, we question because we know we have something higher in us. God has made us in his image, and we have a conscience that causes us to think and to know when we do. How I feel when I think about the way the country's being ruined, Like when I think about them printing more money, it makes me groan in my spirit. When I think about that, I haven't exactly wept over it, but there are things I felt frustrated enough at times to weep. And because here's the thing. Whatever you want to say, Jesus is experiencing a very strong emotion, which is a significant thing. Strong enough that he would weep. Because I certainly do not think those are fake tears. Because it's impossible for God to lie. Fascinating. He wept. We don't have a God that cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. He feels feelings. That's an important thing shown here, regardless of how you want to take it. You can take it any way you like. So I know that there's something to this groaning. And they're weeping, and then they're like, oh, he loved him. Oh, could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died? This is so provocative to Jesus. And therefore, again, groaning in himself, he comes to the grave. It was a cave, and the stone lay upon it. And he said, take away the stone, Martha, the sister of him that was dead. And she says, by this time he stinks. That's too bad. She resists. He's going to stink. It's been 4 days. Let's go back to the house. No, she didn't say that, but it's sort of like, there he is. It's going to stink. There's a slight lack of faith there. Because she does not anticipate what he will do. Even though he has hinted at it, surely strongly. And here he rebukes her. I take this as a rebuke. I could see with tears in his eyes. Said I not unto thee that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Don't you want to see the glory of God? I said you'd see it. Just believe. I don't think he said it right there, right? But he said it before. Because here's the thing. If you live and believe, you'll never die. You will see the glory of God. Because that's what to never die. It just implies, that is the glory of God. To be able to see that and to be part of that and to enter into that. I don't know if it's the glory, but it's, he's going to raise Lazarus since he's calling that the glory of God. Didn't I say you would see the glory of God? My monitor keeps going black. Okay. I wish it would stop that. Okay. And so he had been dead 4 days. if you would believe, you would see the glory of God. So they took away the stone, and then he prays the prayer. And I guess we're going to have to start that. Well, we got a little time here. I'm going to talk about it a bit. He says, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. He said, you've already heard me. This is what I'm talking about in prayer. I was like, oh God, please hear me. It's like, oh, please help. And I've told people in the past, I try to pray not like the Psalms. I try to pray like Jesus. I want to pray, Lord, you always help me. And I know you've already heard me and will help me now. That's how I want to pray. That's how I want to think. Because I always have his help. I don't need to ask for it even. He knows what I need. I comfort myself in speaking to him. But I want to talk it. I like to talk it in a way that makes sense. Because I'm a Christian, not a fourth century BC Jew who, my God, why have you forsaken me? I have to go through that kind of a lesson. Though in the end of that psalm, not in the end, in the middle, he has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted. Neither has he hid his face from him. But when he cried unto him, he heard. God hears Christ always. And on the cross, when Christ called out the words of the psalm, God had not turned his back on him, because that's never true. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. God does not turn his back on you. If his back is towards you, it's because you've gone astray. As far as like in the Old Testament, there will be some notion that God's back is turned on Israel. But as a Christian, a person of faith, who has true faith, he will never leave you nor forsake you. It is impossible for anyone to pluck you out of the Father's hand. Impossible. There's no other creature, there's no thing, no force that can separate you from God's love, which is in Christ Jesus. I knew that you hearest me always, but because of the people which stand by, I said it. I didn't even need to pray this prayer. I'm just talking that they could hear this. I want them to know that I'm only saying it so they can hear it. So that they could know and believe that you have sent me. He says, Lazarus, come out. This big, sounds, he calls Lazarus. Lazarus, get out here. Come on out. Come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes. And his face was bound about with a napkin. He says, let him go. He was all bound up. I don't know if he levitated out, floated out, or hopped out. I don't know. Well, I don't know. He might have just sort of emerged. Though the picture I've been using, right, is from, what was that, Rembrandt? I forget who painted that. But that's a famous one. And they have him kind of emerging, like sitting up. He's coming out of like the sewer or something. The European stuff, they get a little mixed up. Yeah, it's not exactly, it's an artistic representation. It's just meant to be an event. There's nothing particularly historical about that painting. I mean, as far as like meaning accurate, period accurate to the time of Jesus. Anyways, let's see. Besides, they got Jesus dressed wrong. As everyone knows, he always wore a white outfit with a blue sash, right? I always joke about that because I get so sick of seeing that cliche. All right. His head came forth, bound hand and foot with loose him, let him go. Okay. So we're gonna pick. I mean, there's quite a bit of chapter. Oddly, we're gonna pick it up at this verse here. Where do I have it? If there's anything more, we'll probably. We're going to start at verse 45, but we're going to look at it, because of this. This is going to be the wrap up of the study. Many of the Jews which had come had seen the things which Jesus did, believed on him. This was a faith-inducing experience. Like I said, there are ways to increase your faith. Why I received the Holy Spirit? Because it was a powerful thing that seemed supernatural enough to me. I don't care what anybody else thinks about it. I'm not even going to bother to describe it now. My high frequency vibrations nonsense, right? I mean, it's like, I can't tell you exactly what I felt. I've never felt anything like it. It wasn't like a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. It was my hands, my feet, my ears, my lips. And this tremendous, powerful feeling coming over them. I felt, to me, I was like, I've tasted the powers of the world to come. I was like, God, but it's like, it was so, when I think about it, compared to all the things God can do, he just did a tiny little thing. And that induced so much faith and certainty, at least a nice baseline level for me, honestly, because it's like, my faith was really hanging by a thread at that point. I didn't stop believing, but my belief was not strong. And the problem was, it was at the foundation. At the foundation of what I believed, there was problems. I was beginning to doubt the very existence of God. Well, I did doubt the existence of God. Everyone kind of doubts it a little, probably. Otherwise, you wouldn't, if you really believed on him. No, but we really believe, don't we? Yes, we do. We do believe, but we have to have help for our unbelief, because there's like mingled unbelief. Only in humans is this contradiction possible. Can out of the same fountain both bitter and sweet water flow? No. But God will clean us up. We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works. So then the rest of them, of course, some of them tattletale. They tattletale. What a piece of work that is. Anyway, so thanks for joining this study. We'll pick it up at verse 46. I'm going to read it all the way up to 44 and that, but we're probably going to get into 12. We may read 2 chapters in a row, really. I don't know. I may pick up the reading actually late in this chapter, because we read the resurrection of Lazarus, and actually there's very little. We don't need we can talk about the context. We'll probably pick it up at verse 45, even with the reading, and then read the whole chapter 12 to see how they flow into each other. Okay, so thanks for joining me. We'll be back again tomorrow. Until then, here's a little bit of music, and take my advice.
And they shall never perish, neither shall they pluck them out of my hand. My Father which gave them is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. I and my Father are one.
Then the Jews took up stones against the stone. Jesus answered them.
Many good works have I showed you from my Father. For which of these works do you stone me?
The Jews answered him, saying, For a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, because that thou, being a man, makest thyself God. Jesus answered them,
Is it not written in your law, said ye are gods?